Each and every day, enjoy the Simple Six menu at Subway, an entire made-for-you meal featuring one of 6 inch sandwiches like the Italian BMT or Black Forest ham, with any bag of chips and a 21-ounce drink, all for only $6. Subway. Eat fresh.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report, taping this on a Monday morning from Southern California. On the line, Grantland, Zach Lowe. How are you?
Good. Naive enough to think that between the finals and free agency, I might have time to watch a season of Game of Thrones. No.
The Jason Kidd thing was... Well, let's talk about that first. You wrote about that today for Grantland. It just went up. I have not read it because it literally just went up when we started this podcast. But I guess this makes sense to me because if you remember in December, they kind of almost fired Jason Kidd. And I think and then they went on a win streak. His job got saved and the season ended. And he decided, you know what? You know who I don't want to work for? The guy who tried to fire me in December, Billy King, and did a little power play action and failed. And then landed in Milwaukee, which is owned by a guy who used to be a minority owner in Brooklyn, and obviously he had a relationship with him. What was your take on this whole thing?
I mean, it's complete madness. And, look, there are lots of competing stories going on. You know what I mean? If you talk to some people with the Nets, they say, we were never close to firing Jason in December or January. If you talk to some people around the story, Jason started laying the groundwork for this in December and January by saying, hey, maybe we should go outside the organization and hire someone to be above Billy King. In other words, that he didn't pitch himself for the job immediately. And then it just got worse after the draft when Milwaukee contacted him and he just didn't think he had a future. There's all sorts of competing narratives around it. This is ugly, man. Blood is on everyone's hands. No one gets out of a situation like this looking good.
Right. I do think they tried to fire, or I think Billy King went down the road. I know for a fact that he went down the road to try to get rid of him. And I forget what the timeline was, but I remember they won one game. Was it in Oklahoma City? Remember that? They had like a buzzer beater in Oklahoma City, and it kind of turned their season around. I don't remember if that was December or January, but once they went small, they started playing pretty well. The reality is a power play between a coach who almost got fired the first 5 weeks of the season and a GM who made two of the worst trades of the last 10 years and assembled this roster that lost an ungodly amount of money. I'm kind of surprised that both of them didn't go. Did you think that was on the table?
I don't know. I mean, Billy's owed a lot of long-term money. And it's just, everyone's assuming he's operating under this edict of you got to win now. You got to put a competitive team on the floor the minute we move to Brooklyn. I don't care if it costs us 19 first-round draft picks and $1 gazillion. You got to do it. And if that's the case, then it's hard to blame him for those moves. And look, the Nets are a pretty good team. They were a pretty good team last year. I'm at the point where nothing surprises me, but Billy King is, first of all, I think he's done some nice things at a lot of his stops that perhaps people gloss over, but he's also a survivor, man. He's a politician. He's smart, and he's not a good guy to take on in a power struggle when you've coached in the NBA for 1 year and you're like 15 months away from missing 1 million three-pointers for the Knicks.
Do you think Kidd's getting a little bit of a bad rap here for breaking the quote-unquote coach code, which everybody got fired up about? Because if I remember, a couple years ago, Larry Drew was accused of breaking the coach code. He worked underneath Mike Woodson. Maybe it was 3 years ago, whenever he took over the Hawks. There was always rumblings that Woodson felt like he snaked him and they used to be friends. They don't talk anymore. Do you think the coach code, are you subscriber to the coach code? Where do you stand on that one?
Here's the thing. Kidd is getting a bad rap if it's true, which is what I've heard from a lot of different sources, that his original idea was we just got to get someone to be above Billy, whether it's someone from your Russian basketball connections or someone else from around the league. I don't want the job, but we need someone above Billy. If that's true, and I think it was, some people deny it, then the idea that this is just sort of a black and white power play by Kidd himself is a little bit off. As for the coach code, look, it's unsavory, but I look at this, and I think this applies to walks of life outside of sports. No one is going to take care of you but you. I mean, does that make any sense? Like, no one's looking out for you but yourself. I mean, some people might try and help you. Some bosses are loyal. Some bosses aren't. But like at the end of the day, no one is going to fight for you. These teams aren't going to fight for your coaches, for your job. If from a player's perspective, these organizations aren't going to be loyal to you. I just feel like no one in any walk of life is going to protect you, and you got to protect yourself. It's unsavory, but it's not like this. It's not like it's unprecedented.
Zach, I want you to know something. I'm always going to fight for you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I got your back. This would never happen to us. I might be giving Jason Kidd too much credit here, but is it possible he looked at the big picture and said, I'm probably not going to win a power struggle with Billy King. That guy is a political animal. He's tied in with the Russians. This won't work. But if I go down this road, it will sabotage whatever. They'll fire me, and then I'll go take the Bucks job. And if it works, then I have a Fisher, Steve Kerr type situation. I'll make more money. I'll be in charge of basketball decisions. I can't lose however this plays out. I'll take hits for a week, but ultimately I'll be in a better place, so I'm just going to do it. Everyone forgets everything. Except for like Scottie Pippen, asking out of the game and things like that. Right. Everyone forgets everything. And look, the telling thing will be if in 6 months to a year, John Hammond and David Morway are fired and Kidd is named president of basketball operations, which everyone is assuming is going to happen, and the Bucks are denying is part of their plans. I mean, we'll see. Only time will tell. But look, John Hammond and David Morway, they should be looking for new jobs right now, wouldn't you? If you were them, who cares if Team X is a GM? I gotta take care of myself. Yeah, I was actually surprised that they survived the ownership change. So. And I was also surprised the Nets didn't put in some sort of condition with this trade that if Jason Kidd ever becomes the president of basketball operations, that number 2 pick moves to a number 1 pick, something like that. Because it's pretty clear how this is going to play out. He'll quote unquote just coach, and then eventually all of a sudden he'll be in charge of everything. An amazing run for somebody who was a laughingstock last November, though. I mean, I really didn't think he was going to get till Christmas. Look, I can tell you this. People, when they were struggling, nobody wanted their hands on the Jason Kidd hiring. Nobody. It was somebody else's decision. It was the Russians' decision. It was Billy King's decision. It wasn't my decision. Everyone was running away from Jason Kidd. And then, when they turned it around, it was, well, we've unearthed the next really good NBA coach. And it's unbelievable how far we came from everyone running away from the hiring decision. Like, he might actually get fired. He's an embarrassment. He spilled soda on the floor. Right. To he's a gem. To he's now, he's the coach of the freaking Milwaukee Bucks. That's insane. Right. And he won 5 playoff games, if you're counting. You got a hold of a memo that you wrote about in today's piece, which I'm just looking at right now. I wanted to make sure I had the number right. I have seen these. So every year the league sends out a memo to all 30 teams on exactly what teams won or lost for the year money wise. I hadn't seen this season's memo yet. I had seen a couple of the other seasons, and especially the one before the lockout was pretty interesting because it didn't seem like the numbers were as bad as that they kind of claimed during the lockout. It was so bad, and it really wasn't as bad as they made it seem publicly. But the amazing thing about this memo that you got for this year, you reported the Nets have been projected to lose $144 million for last season. Incredible. Yeah, that's an incredible number. Now, again, we should clarify 2 things. This doesn't include Barclays Center stuff, right? And Prokhorov has a big stake in the Barclays Center, and they host concerts and have 9,000 other things going on there. So they may, and given the escalating value of NBA franchises and the fact that Prokhorov is going to have a stake in all sorts of real estate development that goes around Barclays Center, that number is misleading. But it's also completely insane. The next worst loss in the league is projected to be the Wizards at $13 million, and we're talking about 144. Right. I mean, it's hard. You and I could run a basketball team, and even if we outfitted ourselves with an office that had like pinball machines and a jacuzzi and multiple pools, I don't think we could lose $144 million. It's an incredible number. I was staggered by it. Did they lose? I wonder if they lost as much as every other team combined. They must have, right?
I can
if
do
the
the
Wizards
math.
were next at 13.
Oh, yeah, it's not even close. There are 9 teams that lost money. The total losses probably add up, I'm looking at it right now, to like 50 or 55 between the other 8 teams. So they nearly tripled the combined losses of the other 8 teams that are projected to lose money.
So give me the other 8 teams.
And again, these are estimates, right? Because the league, this includes revenue sharing. Either you pay into the revenue sharing system or you get money out of it. And the final numbers for that won't be known for a year. But the teams they have projected to lose money are from least money to Nets. Orlando, about 2 million. Sacramento, about 3. The Knicks, the big shocker, about 3.5. But again, they have all sorts of arena and tax and stuff that totally offsets that. Minnesota at 6. The Bobcats, despite getting $22 million in revenue sharing, by far the most, or the second most, will lose $8 million. Pistons around 12. Hawks, poor Hawks, right. Hawks are neck and neck with the Wiz at 13.
So a big part of this, as it's been explained to me, is the teams that have great local TV deals and/or are getting sweet courtside money. Those are the 2 ways to really, like when you said the Knicks lost $3.5 million, well, they own their own network and they can charge an ungodly amount of money for their seats and their suites and all that stuff.
And they don't pay property tax on MSG.
Yep. But you have a team like Charlotte, they can't be raking it in from their local TV deal. This is why people still think that Seattle will eventually get an NBA team somehow, some way, because once they get that NBA team, they can just combine it with the Mariners or whatever. They might have an NHL team there, who knows? And then you build a cable network and you rake it in. But the Celtics, the Bulls, the Bulls were one of the big winners in this document, right?
Number 2 with an estimated profit after all this at about $60 million. And you mentioned Celtics and Houston. Houston is 3, Boston is 4, about $75 million combined profit between them. And I believe they are for sure 2 of a handful of teams who actually own a stake in their regional sports network, which is hugely helpful.
The Celtics rake it in. But that Bulls number is people don't like the people in Chicago get mad at me because I always talk about how Reinsdorf doesn't like to spend money. And they're like, well, he did this. He took care of Jay Williams after his accident. And he paid Jordan during the bid. Like, that's fine. Just know how much money that guy makes from the Bulls. He makes an ungodly amount of money from the Bulls. Like, ungodly. And they're the only game in town. It's the 3rd biggest city television-wise in America. The other 2 cities have 2 teams. Chicago only has 1. They have the most loyal fan base, the generations of fans that have gone to games. And they rake in money. I mean, they rake it in. That's a team that, between what the value of the team is and how much they make year to year, even if you're a minority owner, you're delighted to be involved. You just see basically just people send you checks every year. It's great. So I just hope people in Chicago know how much money that guy makes from that team.
Well, and this is a big day for you for another reason, if this memo turns out to be accurate, and I think you know what that is.
What is it? Tell me.
Your Oklahoma City Thunder.
Oh,
Coming in as the 5th most profitable team, estimated with a total profit of $29 million. They
made $29 million.
Estimated.
And that's before the luxury tax money gets factored in, right?
No, that factors in.
Okay.
Every team that's getting, so if you don't pay the tax, for people who don't understand, if you don't go over the tax, you get a share of the tax proceeds, and every team that didn't pay the tax is estimated to will be estimated to get $3 million. So that includes $3 million for not paying the tax. And the Thunder actually pay into the revenue sharing system. They're a net payer, which is unusual for a small market team, but they make so much money just on their own that they come out hugely ahead.
I wonder how that number is that high, because it's not like they kept the salaries that low. They just didn't pay the tax. But I've been to that arena. It's a relatively, I wouldn't call it an old arena, but it's not state of the art. It's not decked out with suites. They have a pretty, for the most part, blue collar fan base. And I don't know. I'm just saying, they can't have like a gigantic local deal. I don't think. I wonder how that number got that high.
Yeah, I don't know. And I was going to say, I don't know the ins and outs of their TV deal, but I just can't imagine look, everyone in the city watches the team, so their ratings are probably good. It just depends on when they were able to negotiate it. But it's not like it's going to be within, 10% of the Lakers deal or something like that.
Yeah. And that's why the last couple of years, that's one of the reasons I kept bringing up the Harden trade, because everyone's like, oh, small market team that can't afford him. And it's like, what are you talking about? They could totally have afforded him. And whatever they have going there, it's a little more lucrative for whatever reason than it is in Charlotte or some of these other small market cities. So Indiana made money last year then?
Indiana is going to make money solely because of revenue sharing. Again, projected,
right.
Estimated, all the caveats. They're estimated to have lost $14 million sort of in a vacuum on their own, and they'll get 3 from the tax and 18 from revenue sharing. So they'll make they'll make a profit.
Interesting. And these numbers are all going up, but I think everyone else in the league loved the Nets so much because it was basically like just getting, if you didn't pay the tax, then the Nets were sending you a check. Just them alone, it was probably like, what did they pay in luxury tax? What was the exact number? Do you have it?
$90.1 million.
Right. So there was like maybe 22, 23 teams who were getting tax money from the teams that paid it. Something like that. So that's almost like $4 or $5 million a team.
25 teams.
25, so $4 million a team.
From the Nets, period. Yeah, I mean, it works out that each team gets 3 flat. But yeah, I mean, this is the sort of double-edged sword of all the competitive balance talk. Because like on the one hand, everyone is bitter that the Nets aren't afraid to blow past the luxury tax and they can keep signing expensive players. But on the other hand, when they do that, and especially if they don't get good expensive players, all those small market teams are clapping and say, keep signing them. Pay Marcus Thornton. Pay whoever you want because that's more money for us. So we should mention one of the big winners of this whole Jason Kidd debacle and just all of this information you're laying out in general is the Boston Celtics, who have the 2016 and 18 unprotected Nets picks and then a pick swap in 2017. And I can't imagine Prokhorov is just going to be throwing out 9 figures a year in losses on this team. At some point, he's going to crack down, unless he just doesn't even know he owns the team, which is possible. Well, I mean, there was a story in the New York Post like 4 or 5 days ago that he's concerned and he wants to cut costs. And Woj, Adrian Wojnarowski of Yahoo, had a story maybe 3 weeks ago about how Prokhorov was like open to hearing offers for the team, and everyone poo-pooed that. But I think you put all of this stuff together, and it's like people in the league office have been saying for a year and a half, it wouldn't shock us if he just says, forget this racket. I want to get out of this and make my money and leave.
And I forget the exact number for what he paid for the Nets, but he assumed a lot of debt. And whatever he did when he bought the Nets, turned it into a piece of Barclays and all that stuff, like, was a fantastic business investment. I mean, he basically, when you consider what the expansion teams would be going for now in a city like Brooklyn or Seattle or whatever, I think like Seattle it would probably be over $1 million for an expansion team. So even though he lost all that money last year and was just atrocious with how they managed the team, he's still operating at a profit probably for this whole operation, which is incredible. I don't know how that plays out for them though, because there's been talk now they want to get younger, but like, look at their team. Darren Williams had surgery on both ankles. KG opted in for the $12 million, which everybody, I think some people were a little surprised, but it's also these guys never walk away from that money. I think Paul Pierce is leaving. I think he's going to go to the Clippers.
Pierce's agent represents Kidd, as you know, so that's right. That's a whole funny wild card in this.
Livingston is going to leave. It might end up in Milwaukee for all we know. Brooke Lopez is coming back from foot surgery, which was a really kind of dangerous, risky surgery that they had to do to send the right amount of blood to help the bone heal or whatever happened. And there's a chance they could be terrible next year, which they would have their own pick at least. But what a mess. I want to talk about the Thunder for a second. So they took Mitch McGary at 21 and they took the kid from Stanford, 29, who seems like a little bit of a Cephalosha clone. When you see that number about the $29 million last year and the fact that they didn't make any moves, they had all these expiring contracts, they had a trade exception, they had 2 first-round picks, then they took guys who really, they could have gotten McGarry 10 picks later, and the kid from Stanford everybody thought was a second rounder. Do you feel like we're going to look at that as just a missed window for them? They were so close to the Spurs, and in the biggest game of their season, they were playing Derek Fisher as the fifth guy. Do you look back at that and think, man, they just blew that?
Coach Derek Fisher. One thing about these numbers, not only are they projected, but this is a weird, like the lockout is still fresh, right? And so projecting like a year ago or 2 years ago when they traded Harden, projecting what was going to happen was, to be blunt, an inexact science. So I don't know. I haven't seen this number for them from 2012 or 2013. So for all I know, this $29 million is a massive outlier, and no way they could have predicted it. And the other thing is, this is an owner thing, right? I mean, Sam Presti can do what he wants, but if the owner says, I don't care if we're projected to make $29 million this year, I want to be under the luxury tax, Sam Presti can fight that a little bit. But if the owner says get under the tax and stay under it, there's nothing he can do. He's got to get under the tax and stay under it. That's his job. Whether this is a missed window, look, I trust Sam Presti to draft good players. He apparently promised McGarry that's what the reports were. At 21. I trust him to draft well. He's drafted very well, obviously, historically. And look, we're coming off 2 straight playoffs where the Thunder, or 3 straight where they made the finals. Westbrook got hurt the next year. Ibaka got hurt this year, missed the first 2 games of a series. They lost 4-2. I think the Thunder are totally within their rights to look in the mirror and say, hey, look, we're as good as any team in this league. We're a championship contender. Could they add here or there? Yes. And depending on how predictable this number was, maybe they should have.
I think they should have. Obviously I wrote about this during the playoffs, but I don't know if in basketball you can just assume you're going to be relevant year after year after year, and you build a team for the long haul instead of whatever. And I'm not saying they should have mortgaged everything to make a run, but they were really close last year, and they were a bad matchup for the Spurs. If Ibaka plays the whole series at 100%, I don't know. I don't know what happens in that series, but I do feel like the Fisher thing was a real thing. That was, just think about Game 6. That was the biggest game of their year. They had to win their home, and they had to play Fisher basically the whole fourth quarter and the whole OT. They had nobody else to put in that spot. I don't know how that's not an organizational failure. Like, Fisher was done 3 years ago, and he couldn't guard anybody. San Antonio, everything they ran was to try to get him in trouble in the end of the game, and it's, it's just hard for me to believe that they can't come out of that with some regrets, but we'll see. Maybe it'll all work out. Maybe this is all part of Sam Presti's sports movie.
Well, and it is an organizational failure, right? Because it's not just about Fisher; it's about Lamb and Perry Jones and the young guys who weren't ready. So and by the way, not every team gets their young guys ready in 2 years. That's not shameful. That's not out of the ordinary. But it is when Derek Fisher is playing crunch time of an elimination game when there are 4 teams left in the NBA. That's a problem, and it's a problem.
Well, and also, Kevin Martin was a huge part of that Harden trade for them. Like, they loved Kevin Martin. That was one of the reasons they made it. And within a year, he's become this guy that Golden State doesn't even want to take back in any sort of Kevin Love trade, right? He's become like a stickler. So it seems like they misevaluated him. They definitely misevaluated Jeremy Lamb. The Adams pick turned out good, but it's too bad. I would have liked to have seen that team with Harden at least do one more year, but you look at that's the Spurs, and one of the things that stands out about how they built that team over the last 15 years was they didn't make trades like that. You know what I mean? They had their nucleus and they stuck with it. And anytime they made a big move, they really thought about it carefully. And it's not like they hit a home run with everyone. Like, the Richard Jefferson trade was a disaster for them. But for the most part, they try to keep their nucleus and build around those people. It was interesting to see. I thought Ethan Skolnick on Bleacher Report had a good piece about the Heat yesterday that I liked, about just saying, like, they're trying to keep those 3 guys together. Those 3 guys are smart. They get it. It seems like Bosh and Wade get that they have to take less money. And Riley's really been pushing them about it takes 3 guys to win a title. This is a marathon, not a sprint. just because we had a little adversity here doesn't mean we have to throw this whole thing away. You can build around it. San Antonio won in 2007. They didn't win again until 2015. Like, let's keep this together. And there's something to that. So we think those guys are staying in Miami now.
It's amazing that we're 25 minutes into this and we're just starting to talk about free agency, which starts in I don't know how many hours, not enough hours. I think the signal is clear that those guys are all going to go back, and the Heat just have to make a decision about how they outfit the roster next to them, which, that makes free agency 80% less exciting, I think.
Yeah. I was dubious that Wade would admit that he's not the same guy anymore and would take less and stretch it out and whatever, but I think LeBron played this really well. You got to hand it to him. He opted out early. He opted out a week before he had to. He is clearly putting pressure on everybody. And I think he's made it clear, we need a better team around me, or I might start exploring my options. And he got everybody to listen and think about it. What do you think? If Bosh was a free agent, would somebody offer him the max?
If they could get him on 3 years, I think he could get 360. 3 years, $60 million, which is give or take the max.
From who? Who do you think would pay him that?
Well, if Houston could open up the room, I think Houston would be in play for Bosh. Dallas is an interesting choice because he doesn't appear to fit with Dirk because they both do similar things, but the fact that they both do similar things would make that team absolutely unguardable. Right. Those are the two that pop out for sure. I mean, we could go through other candidates, but he's not going to a bad team. So those would
I thought Dallas too, but I was thinking in my head 4 years, 50, something like that. Although usually whatever number you have in your head for a free agent, that you just have to add 25% to whatever number makes sense, and that's usually what ends up happening. We're going to see it with Gordon Hayward and Eric Bledsoe. People don't realize those guys are getting max offers. Everyone's then maybe they'll get him for 40. First of all, if you offer those guys 4 years, 48, or 4 years, 50, whatever, you're not going to get them. They're just going to match it. So whoever wants to get those guys is going to have to offer more than we think they're worth. This happened with Eric Gordon. This happened with Roy Hibbert. This is what happens with restricted free agents. You have to overpay them in the offer. And, if Phoenix offers Gordon Hayward the max, first of all, great fit for him. Can you think of a better team for Gordon Hayward than Phoenix? I think he'd be great on that team. But I think Utah would have to match it, right?
I don't know what's going on with Gordon Hayward. First of all, I'm just going to come back. I don't believe that Phoenix is going to offer him a max contract, and that's based on nothing. I've had no conversation with them about it. I just find it hard to believe, even though the post-rookie max is lower than the veteran Heat max. I just don't think Phoenix is going to go that route, but I could be wrong.
I'm just saying if they did.
Would Utah match? I don't know. I think they'd be open to a sign and trade. I mean, Hayward was bad last year. I mean, it was a bad situation. He had to do way too much. The team was terrible, but he was not good. And
it was a terribly coached team. He had no point guards. I mean, if you're looking at it I don't want to sound like I'm making excuses for him, but that was the worst possible situation he could have been in, right? They're asking him to be the number one guy, and he's not a number one guy. He didn't have any help whatsoever. He was basically in a Carmelo situation, until Trey Burke finally started playing. But
it was a bad situation. I don't know. Utah has if you include Exum now, they have 6 really young guys. That's exciting, but it's also my God. I don't know if all those guys are keepers. You know what I mean? I don't know if any team wants all those guys to be keepers. Maybe they do.
I'm not a huge Cantor fan. I think he's a 20-minute-a-game guy on a good team. Favors has never shown he could be anything other than an energy guy. Hayward had a bad season last year. He's at 30% from 3. He was 41.5 the year before and 30% last year. I think it was just a bad situation with a team that clearly didn't care about the results, as witnessed by the Jefferson Biedrins trade. And I think it definitely affected him. Plus, he's playing for a new contract. But I think the team to watch with him is the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Well, they certainly need a wing, and they quietly did that Brendan Haywood Alonzo G trade. I guess that actually I was going to say that opened up cap room for them. It didn't. It opened up cap room for Charlotte. But whatever, they need a wing for sure. I mean, their wing, assuming Deng leaves, their wing is wide open, and we'll see.
They have plenty of cap room, and if I were them, I'd be willing to overpay him a little bit. He's also, good guy. They need some stability in the locker room.
Well, and we're forgetting Wiggins,
Yeah. Well, let's say you have Kyrie, Wiggins, Gordon Hayward, Thompson, whatever they do at center. Then you have Deion Waiters as your sixth man. Like, that's the makings of something pretty interesting. And they'll have cap space for one other person too. I'm blanking on the other team that was Atlanta is another one, I think. I don't know if that's a Hayward destination, but I thought that trade was interesting with the Lou Williams clearing out some cap space. Obviously, they have their eye on somebody. There's been reports, Luol Deng, who the hell knows? But don't you think you don't do that kind of trade unless you feel like there's somebody that you're going after, right?
That was a really interesting trade because they open up, like, assuming they buy out Simmons, they open up about $4.5 million in cap space, which gets them to the point where they can offer someone a $20 million contract. And they attached Bebe Nogueira to do it, who's a well-regarded prospect. Now, they're having a hell of a time getting him to come over here. He may have a knee problem, so there are reasons for it. But, like, he was a first-round pick, a mid-first-round pick last year. Like, they paid for that $4.5 million in cap space. They paid pretty heavily. No one knows what they're going to do. They're becoming the official team. They and the Nuggets are now the official teams of the Lowe household right now. I am driving the Hawks bandwagon. I can't wait to see what they do, but they have a good group of players. They're a flexible team. I don't know who they're going to go after. I don't think it's Deng. I don't think it's Lance Stevenson, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah, Ferry has done a nice job of just being a complete enigma, but they're not that far away.
No.
Because Horford comes back, Millsap, Korver, Teague. Like, you start adding all this cap space they have. They got some rookies to run around. Like, that team. Hey, we talked about this a little on draft night on TV where a team like Charlotte or a team like Atlanta, like, who the hell knows? The Wizards came within a couple of stupid plays of possibly making the Eastern Finals last year. And that could happen again this year. You never know. Indiana might take a step back. What happens to Lance Stevenson? What do you think happens to Lance Stevenson?
I think he's going to come back. The vibe I get is that he's going to come back, and they're confident of that. They may have to make a cost-cutting move to make it happen, but they'll do that. I think he's going to come back. But part of the reason is I still don't know what the team is that's going to come after him. I think Charlotte is the most likely candidate. And if they throw, what his max is at him, then Indiana has to think pretty hard. But I think he'll come back.
Can you imagine if the Lakers gave him a 2-year, $32 million deal?
I thought about that in my big Lance Stevenson column. It's like the Lakers are sitting there and it's weird because everyone's talking about them, but no one's really talking about them in a coherent way because they don't have a team. Like, no one knows they have no team. No one knows they have no team, and the chances of them being good next year are slim. Like, LeBron and Melo are not going there. So, I don't know who the player is that's like, sure, sign me up, $12 million, I'll go to LA. Is it Ariza? Is it Lowry? Like, I literally have no idea who the Lakers are going to get.
And they're also in a weird spot because everybody is just assuming Kevin Love is going to go there. I don't buy that one at all. Just because he likes Los Angeles, he's going to play for the Lakers. Like, first of all, now it looks like Minnesota's not trading him. And I'm not sure they ever wanted to trade him. I think Flip was trying to make it seem like he wanted to trade him, but I'm not sure how actually committed he was because, if you actually trade him, it's scary. Because now you're getting picks back that you have to make correctly, and you're hoping the trade works out. And if it doesn't work out, you're fired. This is a better outcome for Flip Saunders just keeping his job. And now he can say, hey, I tried to trade him. The offer, I'm not going to give him away. Then you go into the season and you hope what happens is what happened with LaMarcus Aldridge in Portland last year, where your team starts to play really well, and then you don't have to trade him. And you can still trade him in February. But I just don't think that the Lakers should put everything on hold on the hope that Kevin Love comes there a year from now. Because what is your team with? All right, so you have Kevin Love and Kobe Bryant for the 2015-16 season. Where are you going? And you have Julius Randle. Like, what are you competing for the title with those three guys? I don't think so.
But on the flip side, who's going to them this year with the hope that Kevin Love might come the next year? Like, I don't know who. It's not LeBron and it's not Melo. Maybe it is. I don't know. Maybe it's nothing is impossible with the Lakers, but I don't know who it is. Like, what are you excited about getting Powell back on a 2-year, $20 million deal? I don't know. I said this last week on the pod with Brian Windhorst. I think the Lakers, look, they always get what they want. They always get the guy they want all the time from, Wilt till now. And so everyone assumes the Lakers will figure it out. The roadmap for them figuring it out, I don't see it, and they could be in a worse state than people realize.
Here's what I think they're going to do, and I don't know. I have no inside info on this. It's just a guess, just looking at the landscape. I think they make a short-term run, and they try to get people on 2-year deals because the reality is they screwed the pooch with this Kobe trade. I mean, not Kobe extension. They're not really going to be able to build a team around him anyway, and nobody really wants to go play with aging Kobe Bryant in year 19 and year 20 of his career. I don't think that's that enticing for the rest of the league. But if they can build a short-term 2-year window where they're competitive and they kind of rebuild whatever they're trying to do, and then just with the eye on in 2016, we're going to have zero cap space. We're going to have nobody on our team in 2016, and that's the Durant year.
Kevin Durant can build his team.
Right. Hey, Kevin, build your team. Come, do it. Bring Westbrook in a year. We'll save room for him too. That plan makes sense to me. I'm not sure they would do it, but as part of that, you tell Lance Stevenson, hey, Lance, 2 years, 32. Short term, come on. And I don't know if Indiana could match that. That's Indiana's worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, 16 a year for Lance is unmatchable for them without trading like 4 different people and probably going over the tax.
Okay, so let's say they do that. Let's say they bring Powell back for 2 years, $17 million. They have Kobe. You have Nash is expiring. You can trade for somebody. You're going to be able to get the same. They actually did a nice job of getting minimum free agent guys because people want to live in L.A. So you can always go get those not Matt Barnes himself, but those Matt Barnes type of guys. You can find 2 or 3 of them. Like suddenly that's like a fairly interesting team because I think Randall's going to be good right away. Get Randall, Powell, Lance, Kobe, some point, whatever point guard you figure out, and you got Nash is expiring. Like that's the makings of at least a competitive team. So
can I counter a little bit?
Yeah, they're in the West, and it would be really hard to make the playoffs.
They're in the West. Kobe played 6 games last year and is coming off 2 massive injuries.
I'm with you. I'm just saying they're a crazy franchise. Like they might talk themselves into that game plan.
And I'm pretty sure Powell just completely stopped trying last year.
Yes, we agree.
You and I could have scored at the rim on Powell toward the end of last season. And if that's what Powell is now, he's a very talented offensive player, really a genius player, but that team that you just described is not going anywhere, and Lance Stevenson and Kobe are fighting within 30 games.
Well, what they should have done, I mean, here's what we would have done if we were running the Lakers. First of all, we wouldn't have signed Kobe to that contract, but I would have cleared out everything for the summer of 2015. I would have thrown away this year and just, you have Randall and whatever, and you're just terrible. You basically pull Sam Hinkie, and you go into the summer of 15 thinking I'm now starting to build my team. I don't think they can do that now with Kobe, and it doesn't seem like they want to do that. So if you don't want to do that, what's your plan? I would try to make a run with 2-year guys and see how that works out.
And that's the Dallas plan from last year, except Dallas had Dirk, who is still Dirk, and we don't know if Kobe is still Kobe. And what you advocated this last year. When Kobe was injured, you said they should tank 2013-14 and get into the rigging for Wiggins, right? You wrote a big column on that. So
they accidentally did that.
They accidentally did it, but they didn't do it. They got the 7th pick, which is, historically no great shakes.
Right. But this draft was so deep that, Randall would have been the first pick a year ago. It made me mad that they got Randall just as a Celtics fan. I was like, man, the Lakers get 7, but somehow get Randall, who might be like the second best player in this draft for all we know. I don't know what they do. I don't see how you tank with Kobe. I don't see how he allows it. I think he'd be miserable. I think he'd make everyone else miserable. So if you can't tank with him because you already committed all that money to him, then you got to go short term with all the money. It would be an advantage. I think for them in the market to be offering around some big cushy 2-year deals, you're overpaying people for shorter time. Haven't really seen anybody do that, but it would be an interesting strategy. The other team that, I know you got to go soon, but Dallas, I think, is suddenly not that far away from really. If they can get, I thought Chandler was subpar for him last year, and he might be on the wrong side. It might be a Jermaine O'Neal type situation where he's just not the same guy anymore. But he is in a contract year, and if they can get him to get his mojo back, that team threw a couple haymakers at the Spurs in round one. They're not that far away from being a scary playoff team. What do you think they do?
I agree. I mean, no team other than the Spurs is better coached. Dirk is not what Dirk used to be, but he's still very, very good. They need another point guard, because you can't go to war with Raymond Felton and Gail McKell. And even if you re-sign Devin Harris, you may need another shooter / ball handler. But they're going to go hard for Melo. I mean, they made no secret of that. Dirk made no secret of that when I saw him here last week. I mean, they view Tyson Chandler as a lever to get Melo or LeBron or whoever, and they're on the first short list of teams that are going to meet with Melo. They think their organization, which is as first class as it gets, top to bottom, and Dirk and a solid veteran core of guys and what they did in the playoffs is enough to get a star. And that's what makes this, if the Heat guys aren't really available, who's the star? Melo, that's it. And I think that's why their most likely outcome is like you get two guys in the $8 to $9 million range, and that's a team nobody wants to play.
I'm not sure about the Melo thing because I don't know if Melo and Chandler were on great terms by the end of that season. And if the Knicks are allegedly trying to keep Melo, right? Like we feel like that's what probably their number one objective would be for the summer. I can't imagine they would just trade Tyson Chandler without throwing that one by Melo. Right?
I would agree. Although it's been amusing from an outside perspective to see how many times and how needlingly Phil will throw out the idea that Melo should take a pay cut. That is great theater.
Part of me thinks he kind of wants him to go.
I think he's probably okay. I think he would prefer him to stay on a manageable salary, but that he's okay with the downside outcome of him leaving and them just going into full rebuild mode. But that's just reading the tea leaves. I mean, I don't think he's going to sit there if Melo walks and say, boy, I'm like Rick Pitino thinking Duncan was going to be here and now I don't even want this job. I think he'll be okay.
The best thing that could happen to them, and I think the thing that he really wants, and after this point, weigh in, and then I know you have to go because you're writing a column for tomorrow. If they can get two teams pursuing Melo, telling him, we'll get you the most money we can possibly get you, we'll do a sign and trade with the Knicks. If you get two people bidding against each other in that situation, it's Houston and Chicago, they might be able to get somebody good back for him. And whether it might be Chandler Parsons, it might be Taj Gibson. He needs to come out of this getting a piece if Melo leaves. I think it would be really bad for them if he just gets nothing. And I also think there's a chance, I still don't think Reinsdorf's going to amnesty Boozer if he doesn't have to. Could you take Boozer back, but you also get the rights to Nikola Mirotic?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is accurate, that if they do have a sign and trade with Melo, and there is a sign and trade bidding war with Melo, and by the way, that requires Melo to be open to that and not say, I only want to go to one place and one place only. I think your outcome is right, that they'll get mostly crap, but one asset. I think that's one asset.
It could be Taj Gibson.
That's fine.
Yeah, it could be Parsons. It could be
Terrence Jones.
Terrence Jones could be a first-round pick with a giant trade exception. They need to come out of it with something. And if they can get Houston and Chicago worried about each other, it's not that unrealistic. And I also think, I think Calderon is tradable for them.
Definitely.
I like that trade for them. I like Cleanthony early. I think Calderon is a trade asset in February. The Knicks fans are worried about how he's got 3 years left, and it's like, hey, they could trade that dude. He's $7 million. Like 10 contenders would take that guy. So, I think it'll play out in some way with that. I still think he's going to go to Chicago, though. But my question is, can Chicago get him without giving up Taj Gibson? Because I think Melo's going to want to get paid. There'd be no pay cut for them. He's gonna be like, I'll keep making $21 million a year or whatever it is. So, last prediction for next month.
What, can they get him without giving up Taj?
No, just give me any prediction for the month of July. It can be anything.
Oh boy,
it could be Marcin Gortat signs with Atlanta.
I was going to say Gortat might sign with the Heat. Let's see. Let me think of a good one. Forget that.
I like that one, though. I saw him at one of those Miami Heat finals games. He looked pretty happy in Miami.
Phoenix, I have no feel for.
I don't either. Phoenix and Atlanta are they're too close to the vest.
I'll say this. Golden State gets Kevin Love.
Wow.
I think this Klay Thompson stuff is just, they're not posturing. I thought they were posturing, but they're not. They actually are worried about giving up Klay Thompson for Kevin Love. I think push comes to shove, they'll cave, and Minnesota's excited about Kevin Love. So I'll go. I mean, I don't think this has a better than 50% chance of happening, but it's a good prediction. I'll go with it. I'll own it. Golden State gets Kevin Love.
I like it because I don't think Flip actually has the balls to trade him. So we'll see. I think they'd be crazy not to get Kevin Love. I mean, you and I have talked about this. Like, fine, your best two players can't play defense. Okay, well, you have the next couple years to build around those two players. You have two of the best 6 assets of the under 27 guys. And now, maybe you don't feel great about the team going into next season after that trade, but 2 years from now you will. Just build the right team around them. I don't see how you go wrong with that trade. In a vacuum, Kevin Love is better than Klay Thompson, period, end of story. And there's no question. Here's my prediction I already made. Gordon Hayward to the Cavaliers. And Utah either matches or they don't match.
Interesting. Celtics were allegedly hot after Gordon Hayward like a few months ago. Remember that rumor? Celtics were going to give him a big offer. You don't think so?
Yeah,
well,
they don't have the one.
They don't have the cap rumor anymore, but
I might have been the one that started that rumor.
You might have been, but I think it was real. I think they looked at him.
No, that was 100% real. Brad Stevens and Gordon Hayward love each other. Like Hayward would play in Boston in a millisecond. Are you sure they don't have the cap room?
They could. I mean, they have to do a few things, but they have more money committed than people think. When you start adding things like Avery Bradley's cap hold and stuff like that, it's not as clean as I have it somewhere because I was going through all my salaries over the weekend. This is what I do on my weekends. It's a sad state of affairs here.
Well, they can waive Bogans though right away, and they lose $5 million on that.
I'm not even counting Bogans.
Okay.
I thought I had it because we were going to talk about this, and I had it, but now I can't find out where the hell they are.
All right, now you really have to go.
No, hold on.
I kept you 10 minutes longer than I said I would.
I've got him at 55-9 without Bradley. So that's already only $7 million. They've got 13 for Rondo, 10 for Gerald Wallace, 9 for Green, 7 for Bass,
3.8 for Joel Anthony,
2 and change for Favorani. The guys they just drafted count for about 5.5 combined. And they got some little thing like they waive Phil Pressey and Chris Babb or Chris Johnson or whoever, but they have less than less room than they may stay over the cap. I think is a likely scenario for them. Anyway,
not a lot of takers for the Jeff Green, Thad Young market. The $9 million a year small forward who's not an all-star, not a lot of takers for that market.
But see, that's interesting. I know you're kicking me off, but I mean, that's like Minnesota wants to still be good, right? I mean, that's like the problem the Celtics are having in this Kevin Love trade talks. They don't want Sullinger, Olynyk, and 3 draft picks. They want guys who are going to be good for them next year. And they must not like Jeff Green or Brandon Batt because it's not like the Celtics are not quibbling about, well, we can't throw Jeff Green into this trade. Minnesota, theoretically, the Celtics say, hey, look, Jeff Green could be your best wing player right now. Brandon Bass is like a super-duper version of Dante Cunningham. And here's the same draft picks that we were going to offer you anyway. I mean, is that offer just not on the table? Does Minnesota just hate those guys? I'm confused about that.
I'm surprised, like a team like Golden State that clearly wants to be awesome, and they don't care about money. And they have a giant trade exception, which I think expires whenever the 1-year anniversary of the Iguodala trade is.
So soon.
Right. So in the next 3-4 weeks. And if they don't think they're getting Kevin Love, I'm surprised, like, whoever, whether it's Jeff Green or just anybody who makes in that, like, $6 to $9 million, just to add a piece that would really help them. I'd be amazed if they didn't use that.
They have a 9
you get a really good guy for that.
They have a $9.8 million trade exception that expires on July 10th, so very soon.
Right. So, like Jose Calderon. Okay, we'll take him.
They've got to worry about
slide him right in.
They got to worry a little bit about the luxury tax.
I know, but it's he tripled his money on that team.
Yeah, and by the way, you mentioned Calderon being tradable before. I left that out of my Knicks piece last week, and it made Knicks fans mad. They're right. Every single coach in the league in a vacuum loves Jose Calderon. He's like one of the most beloved players in the league. He's unselfish. He could shoot well. He doesn't force things. He knows his limitations. Like, he's a coach's dream. Every coach will go to his gym and be like, oh, we can get Jose Calderon? I don't care what he makes. Like, let's get him. That guy's awesome.
Well, think about him on Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of the best shooters ever. I mean, people don't realize that. Calderon is not just a good shooter. He's one of the best shooters ever, full stop.
Right. And he's somebody that can't play against every single team, maybe more than 20 minutes, but against a lot of teams he can. Against the Spurs, he had to sit crunch time, and I think people kind of came off that thinking maybe that meant he wasn't good, but he's a freaking asset. Oh, last thing, and then we'll definitely go because we got Ramona coming. You're down on my idea about Memphis just reuniting all the Spanish guys. I thought you'd be more excited about that.
I'm not down on it. I just don't think it's going to happen. I'm all for team speak. I mean, could they get Juan Carlos Navarro back, who was on the Grizzlies for like a season?
Get all of them. Lowe, get Sergio Lowe from Houston.
Yeah.
No, it got screwed up because they re-signed Zach. I was really rooting for the Gasol Hermanos to come back. Trade for Jose Calderon, trade Conley for Ricky Rubio. Just go for it. Just become Team Spade.
What about Ibaka?
I want somebody to try this. Ibaka? Okay. No, he did. I don't know if he was totally happy on that team.
He's coming back this summer for him, though.
I was shocked to hear that. Yeah.
I'm only game for it if they get Juan Carlos Navarro. If they get La Bamba. If they don't get him, I don't support it.
Zach Lowe, read his Jason Kidd take today, read his free agency column tomorrow, and then he's going on a little vacation. And then the month of July is going to be
in August.
Busy.
I'm going on vacation in August. I'm not going on vacation.
August.
Yeah, I'm going to Vegas in like 10 days to hang out with the summer leaguers.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if you're super busy next month, kind of busy or not busy. And it all depends on how much movement and weird stuff happens. The NBA is always weird.
Always.
Zach Lowe, thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right, as promised, Ramona Shelburne coming up. But first, want to mention Stamps.com, sponsor, BS Report, sponsor for a while. If you go to their website, there's a microphone on the top right, and it says, in the words are, heard us on radio or podcast, click here. Hey, you're listening to a podcast. You should click on that button, and when you click on it, you put in the promo code, which is BS. And you get a deal on a whole bunch of stuff, including a scale. You get some free postage. And more importantly, you never have to go to the United States Post Office ever again. You can just print everything out on your printer. You don't have to go to the post office. You don't have to wait in line. You don't have to deal with smelly people standing there in front of you trying to mail some box to somebody. Just stay home. Stamps.com. Print out the postage. Check it out. Put in the BS. Get a deal on stuff. And now, as promised, Ramona Shelburne from ESPN.com, one of my favorites. She is suddenly the most wired-in person in the planet on the two LA basketball franchises. I don't know how you worked your wily powers, but you're like the Woodward and Bernstein of the LA basketball scene now. Congratulations.
I think so. The Lakers were one thing. The Clippers are another. I wouldn't say that anymore in the Clippers just because Doc basically appointed himself president a couple weeks ago, and he runs things a little differently than Mr. Sterling did. But we'll see how that plays out over the next year.
So Zach and I were just talking about what the Lakers might do. And I think it's an interesting conversation because they're trapped with that Kobe contract. So a year, the logical plan would have been next summer would have been the move, where it would have been the summer where they make moves on everybody. Mm-hmm. They can't really totally do that because he's going to be making $25 million a year from now. On the other hand, you could flip this around if you wanted to stay competitive short term. You have Kobe, you have the Nash expiring contract, you have Julius Randle, who I think is going to be good right away for them. Mm-hmm. It sounds like Powell is going to come back. you have enough cap space, not you, the Lakers, enough cap space to go maybe overpay somebody for a 2-year contract, kind of flip out the scenario a little bit, maybe pay somebody 2 years for 30 who might get 3 years for 35, something like that. Maybe they're in the mix for Kyle Lowry, Lance Stevenson, people like that. What do you think they're going to do?
Well, it comes down to whether or not they can suck again, right? And I don't think they can. Like, I don't think you can go through another year of what we saw on the court last year. I mean, people will just stop showing up. I mean, they already stopped showing up one year. But you had the cover of Kobe not playing all year. You had the cover of, you have that lottery pick. You don't have any cover anymore. You can't go be the Sixers. You can't be the Bucks. You can't be, Orlando, who can go into a 3-year nosedive to try to return. First of all, they don't even have their lottery pick next year because that's going to Phoenix as part of the Nash deal, right?
But it's partially protected, right? It's top 5 protected.
Yeah, but I mean,
yeah.
Can you? Even if you're that bad to be top 5 protected, you can't necessarily. They were that bad, and they ended up with they should have got the 6th pick. They ended up with the 7th pick because Cleveland jumps ahead of them. Yep. You can't be that bad again. And so, I think that they're going to have to go out and get people this summer. And they, I know they like Trevor Ariza. I know they like Kyle Lowry. I know they like Greg Monroe, although he might be too pricey. But they're going to fill it in this year and try to not be terrible. You just can't. But what's the point of paying Kobe all that money if you're going to suck again? I mean, what's the point of investing in a player like that if you're just going to be a terrible team and a lottery team again? And I think that's where their heads are at. But you're right. It's an interesting dynamic because who are you going to get that doesn't take you out of the free agent summers in 2015 and 16? Like, I know when they talk to Powell, they're going to talk about a 2-year deal. But you give them a bunch of money over those 2 years, and that keeps them happy because there's nobody else who's interested in Powell that can really pay him. The only thing that they could do is do a sign and trade with Powell if he wants to go someplace else and somebody else wants to commit that much money to him. But he's 32 and he's had foot and knee injuries the past couple of years. Who wants to do that, especially if you don't have to? And so I think what they're probably going to do is try to fill in and be a little more like the Dallas Mavericks, but try to keep everything to where they don't completely get taken out of the running for 2016, not necessarily 2015.
So we think the same thing because so they have $33 million just for Kobe and Steve Nash next year. Randall's got some sort of cap hold for whatever his lottery pick salary is.
2.5.
But they'll have, 25, 26 million, something like that. You could argue they could just go into free agency and offer Kyle Lowry 2 years, $32 million. I don't know if he'd take it. They could offer the same to Greg Monroe. I mean, the problem with the restricted free agents is once you offer the money, you're kind of in limbo for 3 days while they decide what to do. Lance, they could just go out and get. And it would be really interesting to me if they offered him 2 years, $32 million, or whatever the max they could give him for 2 years. I don't think Indiana would be able to match that. I mean, maybe they could offer him 4 years, 40s, but I don't know what he would do. It would be interesting.
Yeah, the thing with the Lakers that they have to figure out is that they've kind of gone into this whole arrangement going, we're going to go after the stars first, and we're going to rebuild the roster later, right? It's like when you're buying a house, right? You just have to look at the house and have a vision for what it could be. Yeah. And that was the vision they wanted to sell to Carmelo and LeBron, and now it seems like those guys are barely going to give them a meeting. And I think that might be the wrong vision. Maybe you need to have that roster that's a little more ready-made. Like, you need to stage the house a little bit better before you go after those type of free agents, before you go after those type of superstars. And if you can get a young piece like Stevenson, I think the guy they actually really like is Trevor Ariza, but I don't know that he's going to sign for a 2-year deal. I know they like Greg Monroe a lot. They like Lowry a lot. But again, those are young players who, as much as you would like to sign them to bring them in on a 2-year deal, they're looking for 4 or 5 years at this point in their careers. And so I think, it's a tough sell because once you do that, there goes your cap space. But it's all, nowadays, and the way all of this is playing out with Kevin Love and probably it'll play out the same way with Durant if he decides that he may not want to, that he doesn't want to stay in Oklahoma City. Any of those type of free agents, you have to trade for them. Like there's not even free agency anymore for max players. You have to trade for them. You have to have the kind of roster that they want to go to. And Kevin Love always wanted to be a Laker, but then he looks at the roster and goes, "Wait, who else is going to be my teammates?" And you'd like to think these guys have vision. You'd like to think that that's a good sell, that they can choose their teammates and tell them who to go after. But nobody's looking at the world that way right now. They're looking at what do you have and how do I step right in and win.
Well, another thing they could do, which would be interesting, they could just trade for people that are under contract.
Right.
Like, for instance, they could just trade for Jeff Green. We'll take Jeff Green from you, Boston. And maybe Boston would do that for a second-round pick or just whatever to get the trade exception and enough money to go pursue Gordon Hayward, who I think they want. Or maybe you say to the Knicks, hey, we'll give you Nash for Jose Calderon. And then you get out of that Calderon contract, and now you've cleared a whole bunch of money for 2015. There's things they can do. I think what they should do, what they should do is just bottom out and be awful again. But you can't really take that risk with that Phoenix pick because what if, as you said, what if it ends up being the 6th pick and you lose it? So what I would do if I were them would just be to go short-term contracts. Try to just admit that you screwed up with the Kobe thing, and now you got to try to build a team around him and try to figure out, can you bring Gasol back after everything's done? Can in the meantime, can you get 3 more guys who make like somewhere between $7 and $10 million a year? Then you go back and sign Powell. Then you work your Laker magic, and you're always able to get a couple minimum free agent guys. And then suddenly at least you're competitive, which is what I think that's the only thing they care about. I'm not saying that's the right thing, but that's what they want. They don't want another season where people don't even want to go to the games.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember last year you go to games and you'd look at the people sitting courtside and you're like, I don't recognize any of these people. Like,
yeah.
This is who the regular courtside people gave their tickets away to. I mean, you can't do that again if you're the Lakers, especially now that the Clippers they have Chris Blake and Doc and they don't have Donald Sterling sitting courtside.
That's the crucial point. Like,
yeah,
it's not just that they're irrelevant unless they make a couple moves, but they're also getting blown out of the water by the other local team, who is one of the 5 most interesting teams in the league. And they have Blake and they have Chris. They have this new rich owner, and there's going to be real energy with that team this year. Not that there wasn't last year, but now to get that Sterling black cloud out of there. So yeah, I'm sure they're going to be thinking and reacting to all this stuff. Paul Pierce.
I think they're definitely interested. I think they're definitely interested in Pierce, but don't you think he's just going to re-sign in Brooklyn? Like, I thought the Clippers wanted Paul Pierce too, but like the word I got was that the Nets are probably going to re-sign him and overpay him.
I think that dude wants to win. If I had to bet, I would bet on the Clippers. They have the full mid-level, right? Right,
they have the full mid-level. And I know that he's a guy they like, but they could also, but if you're and he's a guy that fits what they need, right? They need somebody in the fourth quarter. If Chris Paul's got a hamstring injury or 5 fouls and Blake Griffin just isn't able to deliver and maybe he's got 5 fouls too, you need a guy who can take over. And Jamal Crawford can sometimes be that guy, but that's what Paul Pierce built his career on, is being that guy. And
he gives them flexibility because they can play small with him. He's a great veteran. He's got a great relationship with Doc. He's hungry. He's a leader. He's the leader of that Nets team last year. You'd have such a strong team from a clubhouse standpoint. I think it makes sense. I think the Lakers are a possibility for him too, though. I just have this weird feeling he's going to end up in LA, and I don't know which team.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that it's the Clippers because of the relationship with Doc. But that just depends on if Brooklyn wants to overpay for him. And I thought that was going to happen until this weird thing with Jason Kidd happened. They have the same agent, so I don't know what the relationship is like now with Jeff Schwartz and the Nets. But we'll have to see how the dust settles. Especially now that they're going to have a new coach there too. It's hard to predict anything in Brooklyn at the moment because it's. Like, did you see that coming at all with Jason? Like, when Brian Windhorst first told me about this, I was like, wait, you're kidding, right? Where did that come from?
I thought something was going to happen. I had no idea about the Bucks part of it, but
Unbelievable.
I just knew because I knew Billy had gone down the road a little bit in December of getting rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
So I just assumed that long term wasn't going to be a great thing.
Yeah, plus he sees Derek Fisher get all that money and all that money, and then anytime you this year's coaching market is so different than last year, right? Remember last year was everyone hiring all the young assistants or the players and paying them as little as possible, and then all of a sudden this year, Stan Van Gundy gets $7 million a year, and Derek gets $5 million, Kerr gets $5 million a year, and my first thought was just like, poor Brian Shaw, right? And he would have been Phil's top choice in New York, and he was the runner-up to Kidd in Brooklyn. Stuck in Denver making $2 million a year. I mean, it's just from year to year in that coaching market, it's just vastly changed.
So you've done some recon on the Miami LeBron situation.
Yeah.
Once those guys, I was mildly interested in that story because I wanted to see Wade and Bosh opt out, and until that happened, I was willing to entertain anything. But now those guys opted out, and they're clearly all talking, and it seems like there's no chance he leaves, right? Can we say no chance?
I think there's 1%, honestly. Okay. And and I can tell you this, I thought the only chance that he left was there's two chances. One is if the Clippers really got aggressive about doing a sign and trade for him. Yeah. But they'd have to give up either Blake or DeAndre, and then even the mere mention of that, is not good for your team chemistry. And so they had to go and tell Blake he's untouchable again, which is about the fourth time they've had to tell him that. And trading DeAndre after the year he had, and he's playing on an $11 million a year contract, not great. Although this is the last year of that contract, and they're going to have to pay him next year. That was one thing. And then, if there was a scenario where they could both play together, where LeBron and Melo could find a way to a team where both of them could play together, and it was a market they both wanted to be in. The Lakers had this idea where they could clear enough room where they could get both of them, but then they'd only play for $16 million a year. And your guys, I just don't think that was ever all that realistic. Plus, Kobe was going to have to go and sell them and say, it'll be just like the Olympic team where I play defense and you guys be the stars. And he actually did that. He actually did call both of them and talk to them about it. But the sense I get is that neither of them are playing for $16 million each, and they're just, you go with the sure thing, which is much more in Miami than anywhere else. And so I think all of this is just these guys having leverage. I think Melo goes back to New York. I think LeBron goes back to Miami, and it's just been fun to cover for a few weeks, but that's much ado about nothing.
Interesting. So you think Melo goes back to New York? Because I think he's out of there.
I think he goes back to New York. I mean, he's building a new loft in Tribeca. Lala loves it there. The kids love it. Their kids love it there. I mean, it's just, I just feel like he doesn't want to leave. I think this is about him having leverage. I think he likes the move that Phil's made. And it's just so much more money. Plus, when you look at I think the only place he leaves for is Chicago. Because of the relationship with Thibodeau. And if you look at the career, I always look at everybody's career narrative arcs. He can leave to go to Chicago. You can sell that. You can say the one thing that people have always criticized me for is not in defense, right? Not elevating my teammates, not making everyone better. If you go to Chicago, that's Derrick Rose's team, right? And you've got to play defense for Thibodeau. That fits that narrative arc, right? That fits that you can sell that. You can't sell, you can't sell any of the other ones out there. I guess you could sell Houston, but why would you go to Houston when you could go to Chicago? I think it's a better team. I just think he wants to be in New York. I think that's where he likes it. And that's the same thing. You come back on LeBron. Can he really go to a third team, especially when Riley is doing whatever he wants, especially when he's got everything set up for him there in South Beach? That doesn't fit the narrative arc of his career.
Well, Broussard had a really interesting tidbit in his piece last week. Mm-hmm. He said, it's clear that LeBron has put a lot of thought into this, and this was the thing that tipped me off. He talked about LeBron is worried about how he'd fit in with the Clippers, especially at the end of the games with Chris Paul and the way Chris Paul handles the ball. And, I had that same thought because even though Chris is a terrific point guard, and we can all agree like he's definitely on his way to being an all-timer if he can ever make the conference finals. But he's difficult to play with at the end of games. He dominates the ball, and I don't think LeBron wants to be in a situation where he's standing in a spot watching somebody else handle the offense, which is, in the Miami situation, it was so fluid in the way they had it. Like everything, the offense itself was exactly what he wanted. It was just the people that were in it weren't playing well. And so much of the burden was on him. Like Doug was pointing out, I'd watch the finals games with Doug, and LeBron had to handle the ball all the time for them, which made it so that he couldn't be in the low post.
Yep.
He couldn't be on the wing for breaks. They never got fast break points anymore. So I just think he thinks about this stuff and like what he wants to accomplish as a basketball player game to game. And he just felt like he was on the wrong team. Yeah. And he went to them and was like, we need to fix this right now. Go get me that Napier guy. Let's go get these guys, take less money. Let's go try to get Kyle Lowry, and so on and so on. But I think the real story here, and this point can't be made enough and with enough exclamation points, is the Lakers, had they not given Kobe that contract, really would have had a chance for LeBron and Melo, I think.
It's something that, they probably, when we look back on it when it's all over, I think they might feel that way. And you go back and reverse engineer everything and go, okay, at the time, part of what you were thinking is that they could still get both of them when they did that contract. You could look back on it and go, Kobe was supposed to come back in December, right? I mean, we look at that now and it looks horrible. But Kobe was supposed to come back in December, and you and I both know Kobe. He was not waiting the entire year to get that extension done. Like, I mean, can you imagine what the season in LA would have been like with him playing and talking and chirping and being passive aggressive and about that all year?
You and I have talked about this. Here's the thing: he was getting paid for last season. Yeah. And it's like he was in year 18, and at some point you signed a contract, stick up to it. And let's wait until the summer to figure it out. I just thought they caved. I don't put it this way. I don't think Dr. Buss would have done that contract. I think he would have waited.
Yeah. And I think, and I'll tell you this though, like the initial plan was to wait quite a bit longer. I mean, it was to go longer. And then there was a moment there where they thought they could make a statement by doing it, but they also kind of panicked on it and said, we can't wait. We've got to lock this guy in, because, the image that I had heard and was used, when we talked about it was, it can't just be Thelma and Louise driving off a cliff, right? I mean, they totally could have gone into this summer with nobody on the book, with a completely clear salary cap, and said,
except for Nash.
Yeah, except for Nash.
Right.
But as you wrote in your column, he's not just Steve Nash. He's Steve Nash with expiring contract.
I know. It's two-time MVP expiring contract.
I know. They could have done that, but then what if you do that and you fail? I mean, it's a terrifying thought. And like when these guys are worrying about the bottom, like their Time Warner sponsors who pay all that money, they're worried about the season. They're not worried about season ticket renewals; they'll be fine. But I think at that moment that would have taken an incredible stomach to do that all season long and to go into the summer, hoping that you can pull this with LeBron and Carmelo, but not knowing it.
But you left out the crucial part, though. Where else was Kobe going? Who was paying him even remotely what the Lakers would have paid him,
Okay, but who was the first one? Who would be the first one to write the column when Phil goes to New York that Phil's going to chase Kobe this summer? Right? I mean, that's an easy leap to make. But they had no cap room, though. Yeah, there's no cap room. I mean, they'd have to do a sign and trade or something like that. But I always just look at it from, we can see it now. Like, I agree with you. If they would have waited, they have a much better chance at it, because then you really do have a completely blank salary cap. I mean, it's
no, but come on, we can see it. We can see it when it happened. We all said it. We were like, "What are you doing? Why didn't you wait? What was the incentive to do this? We haven't even seen him play basketball yet." And then he took everything personally and went into that. Whoa, you're going to doubt me? I'm Kobe Bryant. He got hurt 6 games later.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's like, I think you're right. It's the confluence of the fact that Jerry Buss had just died the year before. the Jim and Jeannie are all trying to kind of prove themselves and decide what they're about. There was still the shadow of Phil Jackson hanging over the franchise. I honestly do think they got to a moment where they talked themselves into this idea that they're making a statement by showing loyalty in the Laker way, and that's up for debate right now. I mean, there's still a great case to be made that superstars around the league look at that and go, oh, they really treated Kobe well on the way out. But does that matter anymore? I mean, I think the roster matters. It's the analogy with the house. I mean, it's like Carmelo looks at the roster and says, yeah, I'd love to play in LA. That would be great. But who else do you have? Who else do you have on your team? And I mean, at least they're not the Knicks where they have a bunch of contracts and that you have to get out of, right? That you can't trade. But you don't have something ready-made for these guys. That nobody really wants to make that leap of faith, especially when you're giving up a lot of money to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be some summer. It's either going to be incredibly dramatic and crazy, or it's going to be really boring, and we're just going to be mad that we thought it was going to be more exciting.
I think it's going to be really boring. I know. I think it's going to be really boring. I think when things get interesting is when Minnesota decides what it's going to do with Kevin Love, and that could start a domino effect, because all these teams that kind of set themselves up to go after LeBron and Melo, when those guys don't move. I mean, let's say, okay, even if Melo goes to Chicago, there's a bunch of losers there, right? There's all those teams that have set themselves up, positioned themselves to go after them. Now all of a sudden, I think they all get interested in Kevin Love. I think Houston has not been interested thus far or made any real plays there. They get interested. Phoenix is a team that I've been waiting on to get interested in Kevin Love, because they're the one team that has the best assets. If they want to go make a run at it, they can. It's like once the first two guys come off the board, that's when everything starts moving. But there's not really that many interesting free agents this summer besides the first two, right? I mean, Kyle Lowry's a little bit interesting. Powell's not that interesting. There's not really a market for Powell.
The restricted guys are interesting.
Yeah, but they're also restricted.
Yeah,
right?
Monroe and Hayward and Bledsoe. I think
they're interesting.
Zach and I talked about that a little. You can make a case that all three of them could get max offers or close to it, just because the way the salary cap's going and everything's going up. And even if it seems crazy, it's not that crazy when you think Eric Gordon and Roy Hibbert and other guys who didn't seem like max free agents all got max offers. That's what happens.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they all do get paid, because there's like 19 teams that are under the salary, right, that can make a big offer on them. And that, I guess that's what the CBA is designed to accomplish, right? Where if you save your salary cap space, you can make a max offer that maybe blows out, a team that let these guys get to restricted free agency. You can structure it the way that Daryl did with Ashik and Lynn. I guess it gets interesting, but those aren't real superstars, right? I mean, those are great players, but
Houston's the most desperate. And I don't mean desperate in like...
Don't say that about your friend Daryl.
Well, desperate in the sense like there's a salary cap window closing for them. Because Parsons opted out, they're going to pay him. He's going to be making $12 million or whatever by the time that contract's done. Howard and Harden combined are like close to, they're in the high 30s combined. Lynn's on the books for 8. Like they have one chance here to go out and get a free agent. And once this summer goes by and the Parsons contract locks in, because they're going to wait to sign him until after they try to sign somebody. Once that locks in, this is it. They're not going to be able to get another $10 million a year free agent. So he has to get somebody, and I don't know who that person is. I will say Trevor Ariza really roped everybody in with. He had a good contract year, but he also had a 5-year deal, and I would say in 3 of those years he underperformed. It's funny to me that he's being mentioned with all these guys. It's like, all right, he had one good year. You're going to give him another 5-year deal?
Look at him now. I mean, look what happened. Compare Trevor Ariza to Luol Deng, right? They're in that same market. When's the last time you heard about Luol Deng? I mean, once he got traded to Cleveland, it was like the market just dropped out from under him. I still think Luol gets paid. I still think somebody will give him that kind of an offer. But it almost seems like the offers he passed on in Chicago are going to be way better than what he ends up getting this summer. Or maybe it's the buzz. Maybe he is just so miserable in Cleveland that everybody forgot about him. But in some ways, Trevor is sort of ahead of Luol in that market for the 3-and-D guys.
Makes no sense. He'd be a great 2-year Laker. I mean, that'd be another one. Like if you get him overpay him a little, 2 years for 22, something like that.
Yeah.
Because think about Millsap.
Yeah.
Remember Millsap last year was 2 years, 17. We all thought that was like a crazy number.
Right. Right. Well, I think what's interesting about the length of these contracts now is that everything's going to change once the new TV deal goes down. And the players know that the deal they're in right now, the CBA they're in right now, is horrible. And it's like, I don't know that anybody really is going to wait you're going to structure your contract where you can become, that can get adjusted once they redo things. But we're heading to that place, right? I mean, you're getting close enough to that year where if you're a player like LeBron, do you want to go 5 years? I think they'll do 5 years and then out after 3. But those type of contracts, like the players are going to get back money. Adam Silver's going to have to give them back money. Like when the Bucks are selling for $550, the Clippers are going for $2 billion. You can't cry poor anymore. And then once they do the TV deal, then the basketball, the revenue is really going to go up. So if you're guys like that, like maybe you do that 2-year deal. Maybe you do kind of, instead of locking yourself to 4 or 5 years on something where you're not making a lot. Maybe that is an incentive. Although I don't know, you almost always go for the short thing when you're somebody in your late 20s, early 30s, and this might be your last big contract.
Well, as you said, there's a lot of teams with cap space, and it only takes 2 people to drive somebody's price to an absurd way, which is what's going to happen to you the next time your contract's up, since you're now the Woodward and Bernstein of LA basketball. Ramona, we will read you over the next few weeks on ESPN.com. Great job on the Donald Sterling feature you did 2 weeks ago. If anybody hasn't read that yet, go to the website and read it. We'll talk to you in July.
Thanks, Bill.
40% off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Hey, what you got there, Golick?
The new Subway Chipotle chicken melt with guacamole.
Man, that looks good.
Yeah, this new guac is really bringing the flavor.
Got one for me too, right?
Well, yes and no. Mostly no. Well, really, all no.
Try the irresistible new Subway Chipotle chicken melt with guacamole, juicy grilled chicken strips with Monterey cheddar, Chipotle Southwest sauce, and new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of jalapeno. Subway, eat fresh.